Om Agyanatimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshmatamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upagadamayam Didanti Swambadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapatakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Bharijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Param Sagana Lalita Shri Vishavitam Cha Hey Krishna Karana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kancha Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sudadevi Pranamani Haripriye Vanchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripasindubhi Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namarum Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachadini Nivashesha Shanyavadi Praskachadi Satani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're going to read about Subari Muni. If I can find it. Subari Muni. Can't find it. Can you find it? Subari Muni. I think it's a ninth canto. Ninth canto. Subari Muni. Can just check. Ninth canto.
The chapter 6 of the 9th canto.
Oh, chapter 6. Oh, the downfall of Subari Muni. So, some context. Subari Muni was a great Muni, and he had lots of mystic powers. And it's not exactly whether it was the Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, or Dwapara Yuga, but he was engaged in mystic yoga. And he was meditating, apparently, in the depths of the river Jamuna. So as most people would be a little afraid to go too deep into the river Jamuna, he was way down the bottom. So he was able to control his breathing and various And Subari Muni, it seems his eyes at one point were open, which is not mentioned here, and he happened to see two fish engaging in what you would call like fish-like activities, or if you like, sex life. So in other words, something fishy. So he saw these two fish doing something fishy, and this disturbed his mind, apparently. And it disturbed his mind so much that he wanted also to engage in sex life. So of course, sex life is permitted in the Vedic culture, Varnashrama Dham, Grihastra, Ashram. It's not denied. So he came out of the water and he went to the king of Mathura, and the king was called King Mandatta. Chapter 6. And King Mandatta had 50 daughters. Yeah, and they're all very beautiful and qualified and so forth. Just to confirm, text 40. Subari Rishi was engaged in austerities deep in the waters of the river Jamuna when he saw a pair of fish engaged in sexual affairs. Thus he perceived the pleasure of sex life, and induced by this desire, he went to King Mandatta and begged for one of the king's daughters. So he just begged for one of them. In response to this request, the king said, "O Brahmana, any of my daughters may accept any husband according to her personal selection." So this yogi, being under the water for so many years, his hair had gone white. And we can imagine his skin was very loose and probably a little scaly. And apparently his head was shaking. So the king, he looked at this old man, this invalid. He was invalid. And thought, I can't demand any of my daughters to marry this feeble person. Let them choose. So this is an example of diplomacy. You see? The king could have said no, but then the sage might have become angry. And you don't make a sage or a Muni angry, because they can do the curse. So the king, being a diplomat, being very diplomatic, he put the ball in the other court and said, well, it's not up to me to choose. I'll let one of my daughters choose. And of course, none of the daughters were interested. So this is diplomacy. So you can use diplomacy in Krishna consciousness. And you just have to look at ISKCON. And you can see there is diplomacy. But if it's used for the service of Guru and Gauranga, it's perfect. But if it's used to promote yourself, it's terrible. And Prabhupada, he uses the example, because I looked this up, the word rascal. So I asked one devotee, how many times did Prabhupada use this word, rascal? And you can't count. I think actually it's his favorite word. After Krishna, rascal is his favorite word. So Prabhupada, he said, yes, these people are rascals, but unless rascaldom exists with Krishna, how can it exist in the material world? Because whatever goes on here has its perfect presentation in the spiritual world, Vrindavan, Ayodhya, Vaikuntha. And then Prabhupada said, then he gave an example. This is to Brahmatirtha Prabhu in Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, which no doubt you've read perfectly. So he's asking Prabhupada in 1972 in Mayapur. And Prabhupada said, yes, rascaldom, it exists in the spiritual world. And then he gives an example that Radharani is walking and somehow the Krishna is there and she falls down. She may slip or something, or spiritual emotion. And then Krishna takes that opportunity and kisses her. And then Prabhupada said, so Krishna is the supreme rascal. He's the supreme rascal. And because rascaldom exists in Vrindavan, it exists here in the material world. So diplomacy, politics, it can also be used in Krishna's service. But if you use politics to present yourself, to put yourself in the middle for your own sense gratification, even though it may be subtle. Subtle means pratishta, collecting followers, collecting name and fame, collecting prerequisites, possessions, position, power. We've just had the elections. Power. So if that's what you're interested in, it's contaminating. But if you use politics in the service of Guru and Gauranga, then it's all right. So this is an example, King Mandata. So Subari Muni, being very smart, he thought, obviously these daughters are not going to be attracted to a mystic yogi. A mystic yogi who's old and who has white hair. So by my mystic powers, I will change myself into a very beautiful Bollywood film star. And there he was, Bollywood film star. And they all wanted to marry him. Not just one, they all wanted to marry him. But what's interesting is that because they so much wanted to marry him, they gave up their sisterly relationships and they started to fight amongst themselves. But these ladies or princesses were very advanced, very qualified, but still this mode of passion came in. So let me read it. Subari Muni thought, I am now feeble because of old age. My hair has become gray. My skin is slack. My head always trembles. Guess that would be what, Parkinson's disease. Besides, I am a yogi. Therefore, women do not like me. Since the king has thus rejected me, I shall reform my body in such a way as to be desirable even to celestial women, or to speak of the daughters of worldly kings. Thereafter, Subari Muni became quite a young and beautiful person. The messenger of the palace took him inside the residential quarters of the princesses, which were extremely opulent. All 50 princesses accepted him as their husband, although he was only one man. Thereafter, the princesses, being attracted by Subari Muni, gave up their sisterly relationships. And they quarreled amongst themselves, each contending, "This man is just suitable for me and not for you." In this way, there ensued a great disagreement. Because Subari Muni was expert in chanting mantras, his severe austerities resulted in an opulent home, garments, ornaments, properly dressed, decorated maidservants, many gardens, varieties of flowers, beds, seats, ornaments. Surrounded by these opulent paraphernalia, the Muni engaged in family affairs with his numerous wives. Text 47, Mandata, the king of the entire world, was struck by wonder when he saw the household opulence of Subari Muni, and he gave up his false prestige in his position as emperor of the world. In this way, Subari Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the material world, but he was not satisfied. Just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of fat. So sense gratification you can never appease. You can never appease. It always demands more and more and more. For instance, you're a little hungry, and then you come to Radha Radhanath, and then you take Mahaprasad, and then you take a little, then you take more, and then you take more, and more, and more. And then you overeat. And then you get sick. So the senses are never satisfied. But of course, if we take Mahaprasad, it's to our benefit, definitely. Thereafter, one day, while Subari Muni, who is expert in chanting mantras, was sitting in a secluded place, he thought to himself about the cause of his fall down. So his conclusion was, which was simply that he had associated himself with the sexual affairs of the fish. So then he gave up that grihastha life, and in this way he passed his life in household life. To renounce material association, Subari Muni accepted the Vanaprastha order, went to the forest, and his devoted wives. They had no shelter, so they followed him. So they may have engaged in sisterly quarreling, but they were also very elevated, and they followed him into the forest. And then it's described that Subari Muni went back to the spiritual world, and his wives went with him. This is where Prabhupada says, by observing their husband's progress in spiritual existence, Subari Muni's wives were also able to enter the spiritual world by their spiritual power. So the point I wanted to read about was Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. Why Subari Muni, on seeing some fish copulating, would you be so agitated? Sometimes we may have in the past gone to an aquarium, and we may have had a very good view of fish, but it's very difficult to think of sex life when you look at some fish. Would you agree? Or when the sardines come, and they all rush down with their buckets to the beach. I did a Google. These sardine runs are sometimes 7 or 10 kilometers long, 30 meters deep, and 1.5 kilometers wide. Can you imagine how many sardines that was? Probably billions. and they seem to like sardines or pilchards. They seem to like more colder water, apparently. So you see some fish, and it's very difficult to get sexually aroused. You've got to be a little strange. So what's the real truth? What is the real reason why Subari Muni became agitated? So now we're going to read. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that Subari Muni had fallen from his austerities because of Vaishnava aparad. So aparad, apa means to be against or opposing, radha, or devotion to Krishna, or something that pleases Krishna. Aparad, Vaishnava. So what did he do? The history is that when Garuda wanted to eat fish, Subari Muni unnecessarily gave the fish shelter under his care. Because Garuda's plans for eating were disappointed, Subari Muni certainly committed a great offense to a Vaishnava. Now, Prabhupada's wording, a great offense. And for what? He just gave some fish protection, that's all. It wasn't directly against Garuda, but he interrupted or he disappointed Garuda's plans for eating. So Garuda is Vaishnava, and he's in an eagle's body. When I went to Indonesia, they have their domestic, I think internationals, it's called Garuda planes so apparently Garuda spent some time in that part of the world, Indonesia. Fiji, Indonesia. Garuda, it was natural for him to eat fish, but he's a Vaishnava. Same with Jatayu. He's a vulture. So what do vultures eat? Pieces of flesh. So Vaishnavas come in different shapes. It's not that you have to be a man or a woman, but generally it's men or women. So Garuda was disappointed in his attempt to eat. And this, Prabhupada says, was a great offense. It was a great offense. Subari Muni certainly committed a great offense to a Vaishnava. Because of this Vaishnava aparad, an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, Subari Muni fell from his exalted position of mystic tapasya. One should not, therefore, impede the activities of a Vaishnava. This is the lesson we should learn from this. So one should not impede the activities of a Vaishnava. We should be very careful. And the Padma Purana also states, Satam Nanda, Satam Dindu Namaha, Parama Aparad. The worst offense to the holy name of the Lord is Nindu. And Nindu is a very broad word, Vaishnava Nindu. It means to have ill feelings towards the Vaishnava, to have bad thoughts, to try to control, to censor, to impede, to disappoint, to castigate. Obviously, you know what that means. To castigate a Vaishnava, to objugate a Vaishnava. Understand, Savi? Good. It means to criticize. So we should be very, very careful. That's the conclusion. In dealing with Vaishnavas. Of course, there's different degrees of Vaishnavas. There's the Kanishta, and even within that there's categories. There's the Madhyam, intermediate, and then there's the Uttama. The problem is that being a neophyte devotee, we can't properly judge what level another devotee is on. There lies the problem. That's the real problem. We can't really judge. We are more neophyte. So we don't have it's called vichar. We don't have the ability to discriminate. We can't figure it out. We think, oh, this person's a sannyasi, must be more advanced. Or this person's a lady, it can't be so advanced. This person's not initiated, this person is. This person has 50,000 disciples. This person has no disciples. We base it on material consideration. This person is old, therefore they must be learned. But Prahlad Maharaj is 5 years old, so he can't be advanced. We base it on material consideration. So it's a problem. I can give you a practical example. Vamsi Das Babaji Maharaj, there's only 2 photographs of him ever, would go around naked, except for a small loincloth. So when I first went to Vrindavan, I went in 1978, then I was preaching for the next 10 years. Then I went in 1988, and I would see a picture of Vamsi Das Babaji Maharaj. As I said, there's only 2 pictures. And I would see him on the pictures on the altar and the various temples in Vrindavan. And Vamsi Das Babaji Maharaj, he had long hair and big beard and glaring eyes. And honestly, it reminded me of whenever I saw this picture, I'd think Bob Marley. That's who I'd think of, Bob Marley. So then later I realized that he was Mahabhagavat, Vamsi Das. And this is being confirmed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, if you read, especially Bhakti Vaibhav. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav by my godbrother Bhakti Vikash Maharaj. There's information about Vamsi Das Babaji Maharaj. So he was self-realized. And he was in Vatsalya Ras. So he was a follower of Mother Yasoda. Yeah, and he would carry with him the deity of Gopal. One incident, he took the deity of Gopal to a railway station to show Gopal a train. And on another occasion, Vamsi Das Babaji Maharaj, he saw a wheel going around. And he said, Rasa Lila, Rasa Lila, because it's a circle and it's going around. So he was always immersed in Braj, Vrindavan, Vamsi Das. So if we're giving a talk, like Saturday or tomorrow, Sunday, Love Feast, and Vamsi Das comes in to the foyer, right? With hair all over, Bob Marley hair, naked, right? And dancing. What are you going to do? We're going to get the temple security and show him the door. What can we understand? But actually, he's Mahabhagavat. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta originally used to ask his followers and disciples, go and give him bhoga. I think this would have been the Chaitanya Mat in Mayapur. And sometimes Vamsi Das would accept it, sometimes he would ignore it, or sometimes he'd run after the people who gave it to him. So they didn't know how to react. These were bona fide disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta. So Bhaktisiddhanta told them, stop going, because you'll commit offenses. So that's exactly what we would do if he came here. We'd throw him out. We'd impede his progress, and we'd show him the door. So then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, just the temple president, or in the Gaudiya Math they call it the mutt commander. You know, the mutt commander is definitely has a less prestigious sound than temple president. But Prabhupada introduced that word, temple president, so we stick with it because we are following Prabhupada like that. So very cautiously sometimes they would give him some bhoga, and so for the neophyte devotee to discriminate, it's not possible. You've got to be intermediate, which means madhyam. So we see that also in the history of ISKCON. We have, on occasions, OTT, overstepped, and even offended various Vaishnavas. We have to be honest. But as ISKCON is maturing, we're beginning to learn a little more. But one has to be very cautious and very careful. So then you may say, well, if it's a particular devotee who's misbehaving perhaps, or sadachara, inappropriate behavior, what do we do? Do we just look the other way? Do we just close our eyes? If it is our position to correct, then we should very cautiously correct. But that is only Diksha Guru, Siksha Guru, a guardian of the mission. Guardian of the mission means like the GBC or some more temple president, more senior position. And these leaders are supposed to protect or be the guardians, because sometimes it's their position or job to do this on behalf of the mission. But then also must be very careful, extremely careful in correcting. And the perfect example is Mother Yasoda. Mother Yasoda catches Krishna. Why? Because he's eating. He's going to the other gopis' houses, stealing the butter, stealing the makkan, stealing the ghee, pinching the babies. Pinch, pinch, pinch. And Mother Yasoda, she thinks, well, why is Krishna going to other ladies' houses? What's wrong with my ghee? What's wrong with my yogurt? And sometimes she may chastise him, and then of course in the month of Kartik, she chases him. So that's not done out of pride, it's not done out of maliciousness. There's no violence there actually, it's done out of love. But she's still chasing, but it's done out of love. Another example that you can relate to, you have a daughter or a son, grandchild, and they run across the road. They play in the road. So you catch hold of the child, and you may slap the child on the foot, on the leg, but even that now you've got to be careful. You're very, very careful. And then the neighbor may see, some passing man or woman may say, oh look, this adult abusing this child. And then they phone the police. But they don't understand it's the parent, and it's done out of love, or should be done out of love, obviously. So when we correct, it should be done in the mood of Mother Yasoda. But even then, when we correct too many times, we may become a little oblivious, isn't it? We become a little forgetful of how dangerous it is. So one should be doubly cautious. But Mother Yasoda has these relationships. It's only in Vrindavan that the Supreme Personality of Godhead will agree to being your son, or Radharani agrees to being your daughter. So these residents of Vrindavan are worshipable. And the way we approach Krishna in Vrindavan is through the devotees. You can't approach Krishna directly. Doesn't work. But you can approach his devotees. So we approach the cowherd boys. We approach Madhu Brata or Madhu Kanta. They're the servants of Krishna in Vrindavan. And they appeared as Vasudev Dat and Mukunda Dat in Gaur Leela. But it's interesting, Vasudev Dat, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, Vasudev Dutt and Haridas Thakur are millions of times more advanced than Jesus Christ. Quote, Bhaktisiddhanta said that in his Anubhashya. That two personalities entered into Vasudev Dutt. And one was Madhubrata, a servant of Krishna Vrindavan, and the other was Kunjari Manjari, a young gopi. So this can happen, two personalities in one person. In the material world, if someone has split personality, what do we say? Psychologists, psychiatrists will say schizophrenia. And sometimes you have triple personalities and quadruple personalities and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We can hide from that. So, in the spiritual world, these personalities, Narahari Saka, an associate of Lord Chaitanya, two personalities entered into him. Madhumangal, cowherd boy, and Manjumeda, gopi. So when they enter into him, they don't display their personalities together because you can't. Even a split personality, it's not two people at once. It's one person, Dr. Jekyll, and then later it's Mr. Hyde. So we apply that same logic to the associates of Lord Chaitanya. So to enter Vrindavan, Kuyid Vasambraja Sada, one must follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan, which means Madhubrata, Madhukanta, and they are servants, but intimate servants. Whereas Prahlad is a more basic servant. It's actually of a lower kind, believe it or not, although Prahlad is worshipable to us. And then we have Sakiras, cowherd boys. So Madhamangal, Stoka Krishna, Subal, Sridhama, Dharma, Vasudharma, Gobata, Kalavinka, Gandharva, Bhadrasena, Viraprastha, numerous demigods, numerous cowherd boys. And they also have different flavors and different moods. They're not all the same. And then Vatsalya Ras, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, Vrishubhanu Maharaj, Rohini, Mukara. So we follow in the footsteps, and then the younger gopis. So in our particular line, we're definitely emphasizing on Radharani. But other sampradayas, Vallabhacharya, Nimbakas, it's Chandravali. And there's other associates of Krishna, they're called Yuktishvaris. But in our line, following Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda, it goes to Rupa Goswami and it's Radharani. Therefore the worship of Radha and Krishna is so important for us. And Prabhupada installed many Radha and Krishna deities. So in conclusion, you can't approach Krishna directly, Nrsimhadev directly, or Lord Ram directly, but through their devotees. And even to approach their immediate devotees is really actually not, it's being presumptuous. You can't just rock up and serve Radharani a garland or something. No, she has her associates, and they have their associates, and they have their associates or servants. So this is called Anugatyadam. Anugatyadam means to worship the Lord, but from behind, or as a follower. So we're followers. And I'll give you another practical example. When Srila Prabhupada was present, he had an inner circle. And that inner circle comprised of people like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Kiraj Swami, the last 1 year, Bhakti Chu Maharaj. They were like inner circle. And the average devotees, especially after 1971 or 72, they just saw Prabhupada in class, or they may go for morning walk. But they didn't massage him, they didn't cook for him. So the same with Radharani, you can't directly, it's being presumptuous, it's trespassing. But her followers, and the followers of those followers, and the followers of those followers of those followers. So when it says Kuyud Vasam Brajasada, always live in Vrindavan, always think of Krishna, Krishna Smaranam Janam Kashyam Prastam Nija Smahitam. Nectar of Instruction, verse number 8, the purport. Nija, Sava. You follow in the footsteps of an eternal associate of your choice. Your choice. Nija. You choose. When you become spiritually advanced, you'll have a certain propensity. So we're not on that high level, we're much lower down. And we generally will worship all the incarnations of God, especially Nishingadev. Like I think today was a Nishingadev Yagya in Peter Marisburg. And many people came, it was nice. And Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj went, it was really nice. So we worship Ram, Nishingadev, Kurama, all the incarnations we respect. There is special emphasis on Krishna because Prabhupada gave that. And we try to visit Vrindavan, Mayapur, Jagannath Puri. Then gradually, as we advance, we'll have a proclivity or an attraction or some special greed towards a particular ras. But that comes a little later. And we shouldn't be like monkeys and jump from one branch to the other. I am inundated with monkeys in Hillcrest. Literally. So when they come, I chant Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda, and then I chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. And then I say, Tumi Vaikuntha Paitaba. Haridas Thakur said, to me, you, Lord Chaitanya, Paitaba, will take all of these living entities back to Vaikuntha, the spiritual world. And then the monkeys look at me. Now you know how they look at you. So I look at them back and I go. And then they look at me and I look at them. And they look at me and I look at them. Yeah, and so life goes on. So at least I'm doing a little bit of preaching to the monkeys. Subari Muni ki jai, Mahabhagavat Parana ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, our Guru Parampara ki jai, go Brahmanandi. So, like to ask anything? Or make any comments? Nothing? No comments, no questions? Srila Narottam Das Thakur, two famous books, Pajavali and Prem Bhakti Chandrika. And apparently Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj knew them off by heart. One time he was asked, Gokishore, how can I get love of Godhead? And it seems, according to how we've read, Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj said, you go to the marketplace with 5 annas. 100 annas is a rupee. So it's not much. And he said, and you buy Pajavali and Prem Bhakti Chandrika. Just buy these 2 books and read. From this came We Sing Every Day Shri Guru Charana Padma and Shri Rupa Manjari Pada. Very, very famous. Narottam is very important acharya. So Pajavali is going to speak about Pajavali.
So I have a burning question. I actually went to Subari Muni's ashram when I was in Vrindavan, and there's a very old tree there as well, under which he sat and meditated. So I was thinking, if this could happen to Subari Muni, then what are my chances on this path?
I didn't get the first part. Can you?
I was saying that if this happened to the Muni and
Oh, you mean the mistake, the Vaishnava aparad?
yes, so how do we kind of make it on this path?
How do we handle it? I was reading Prabhupada Lilamrita. In Vrindavan, what you do is multiplied 100 times. 100 times. But then Prabhupada said also sinful activity, 100 times. This is Prabhupada Lilamrita. And then there is a recording of Prabhupada in 1976, and I played it. Prabhupada speaking in Vrindavan, and there he said 1,000 times. So 100 times, 1,000 times. And our godbrother, he stretched it even further, Ahendra Prabhu, and he quoted the Hari Bhakti Vilas that says, if you chant the holy name of God on tulsi beads that are shaped like a madanga drum, it's 3 times more potent than our ordinary beads, apparently. Then you times that by 1,000, Sahendra Prabhu, 3,000 times. It's remembrances of Sahendra Prabhu, our godbrother. So one must be very careful, yes, Vrindavan. And in that same section where Prabhupada says multiplied 100 times, in Prabhupada Lilamrita, Prabhupada also says you stay 3 days and 4th day you leave. And he also said even the dogs are Vaishnavas. I used to go in the evening sometimes, many times, walking on the side of Govardhan Hill to Aniyor. And there was this one particular dog used to come out and roll on the ground in front of me because it wanted its stomach to be itched. So I put my foot out, I was wearing shoes, and I itched it. And then I caught myself, and I think, whoa, what am I doing? This is a dog, born in Vrindavan, will die in Vrindavan, and will take birth in the spiritual world. I can't touch it with my smelly, made in China shoes, sneakers. So I itched it with my hand. And so you've got to be very careful in Vrindavan. Mayapur, not so much. These 10 offenses are applicable, and offenses in general in Vrindavan, but in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said, Esaba nahi aparad vichara. There is no consideration of offenses in Navadvip. Vichara, consideration. So this is the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda. And I think Eka Chakra even more. Anything else you'd like to ask? Oh, yes, Rupa. I can hear it better if you just speak.
Can you cause offenses in your mind towards another devotee?
Can you cause offenses in the mind?
And get reaction for that?
And do you get a reaction for that? Good question. Lord Brahma, our Sampradaya Acharya, within his mind, thought of sex life with his daughter, Vak, V-A-K. And everyone knew about it because they had special powers, and he felt very guilty, and apparently he gave up his body. But it's all in the mind. So in the Kali Yuga, I've understood there is a benediction that even if you think bad thing within the mind, you don't get severe reaction. But you will get a reaction. Dayate Vishayam Pumsam. While contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment. If you're hungry and you think of pizza, debene, pizza, like I'm sitting here and all I can smell is those samosas roasting in that fresh ghee, and I'm a vegan. This is real torture. That's how they planned it, you know, so you sit here and you smell this samosas. You know, like. So you think of samosa, then at some point or other, while contemplating it enough, thinking, feeling, and willing, but it's actually not thinking, feeling, and willing, it's feeling, thinking, and willing. First, the feeling comes, I'm hungry. Then you think about it, and then you do it. You go to the kitchen and you steal a samosa while no one's looking. You know, or you create a diversion. You know, you let off a firework or something. So the reaction you'll get if you think in a negative way against the Vaishnava or anything to do with Krishna, Tulsi Devi, the deities, is that as you continue, your mind immediately becomes contaminated, and then as you continue to think about them, the next stage is it comes out of the mouth. And at some point or other, you'll say to your husband or wife or you know so-and-so? You know so-and-so? He did this, she did that. So now it becomes verbal. So better you catch it within the mind, you catch it. So sometimes these thoughts come because we're living in this Kali Yuga, but as easy as the thought comes, let it go. Don't dwell on it, don't dwell on it. That means we're putting fuel on the fire and we're putting water on the fire. It's just, we have to check ourselves a little bit. So if we suspect or think some nindu, negative thoughts towards Vaishnava, Tadiya, paraphernalia, Vaishnava, we have to check ourselves. And the best way to counteract it is to glorify that particular Vaishnava. So in your mind, start glorifying. I can just end. In the 1980s, I was in Johannesburg, and we were all selling paintings, Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj, Ramanuja, and Prabhu's. And I was in charge, some or other, I don't know how that happened, but I was in charge of like 25 devotees. So I used to I would interview them or speak to them every week, how are you doing, how are you doing? And of course the main problem was friction. friction. Prabhupada said, whenever there's two people, there's disagreement, or can be. So I used to read books on management also, simply so I could manage a little better. And the favorite book was Your 1 Minute Manager. Really, really good. The 1 Minute Manager. And the other one was called Hide Your Monkey. Your monkey is your problem, and it's on your back. And you come to me, and you want to put your monkey on my back. You want to download your problem on me. But it's better that I just educate you how you can solve your own problem rather than me solving it for you. That's called the monkey. And then Who Moved My Cheese? I think we may have read some of these. So basic, you can't believe it. Who moved my cheese? So I read these books, trying to perfect my service. And one thing that I learned, it was really nice, that if a devotee is having some mental problem with another devotee, or some critical thoughts, then every day they should go to that devotee and in a very pleasing way speak to them without patronizing them, but point out something good that they're doing. Oh, I see you every morning at Mangalarti. Oh, I think you're chanting good rounds. This is my inspiration. And every day for months, come up with something different. You can't repeat it, and it can't come on as condescending or. So we should think in a positive way. If you think you might be a little guilty of negative feelings. So thank you all. We shall pray the mercy of the residents of Vrindavan and Srila Prabhupada, our Guru Parampara. Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. So we just end with a short kirtan.